Hi, in this brief video, I wanted to share some thoughts with you about book recommendations and how they relate to our spiritual journey. This question came up for me recently when somebody asked me for some recommendations for books for them to read. And I get that request from off and on. And I can always come up with something. I can always make a recommendation for a book, one that I know resonated with a lot of people. But I also sometimes think, I really also need to know where you are on your journey to make a recommendation for you. Because I do take it very seriously that I know that whatever we're going to spend time on in terms of a book or any other thing, whether it's a video or a TV show or something like that, is this something that I think that you will enjoy and benefit from, and especially in the relation where you are on your life's path. Now, we can all make recommendations to anybody just about on anything without putting too much thought in it. I can stop in at any moment and say, here's the things I enjoyed recently, and you might enjoy them because I enjoyed them. And if I think you're like me, you might get benefit from it. And that can be, easy, quick fictional reads that are like a thriller or something like that. Or it can be some spiritual books, books that I think have a lot of wisdom that can put the pieces of life's puzzle together for you. So I can make recommendations in either way. But if I'm making a recommendation that I think is a deep step for you, something that is maybe something you need to know at this point, a juncture in your journey in life, then I do want to make something that's specific for you that I think will really be beneficial for you. I know that I get recommendations for people for books all the time. They say, you need to read this, you need to read this. Well, I got to stop and think. I've got a reading list that's 10, 20 books long. I've got books that I had on the reading list that I've dropped off because I'm thinking I'm probably never ever going to get to them at the way things are going. And then a new book comes along and I have to say, well, where am I going to put this into the mix? And so I have a little bit of a criteria that I go through in terms of my selection of a book and how I put it in queue for me to consider reading it. And there's sort of three questions I look at. The first one, and probably the most important one, is does the topic and what the book's about resonate with me? If somebody recommends a book and I go and say read about it online to find out a little bit more about it, how am I feeling internally? Do I feel like there is something in me that's calling me that I've really got to read that book? If I do, then I'll move that book up into my queue. If not, I'll just set it aside. I also consider the source. How well do I know the person? How well do I value their input and recommendations to me? And if the higher or better that I know them in the spiritual path, I'll consider that a little more. And thirdly is the concept of how frequently have I heard about the book? Because even if it didn't originally resonate with me, or the person who made the recommendation didn't elevate it for me, if all of a sudden that book starts showing up in multiple times in my life, I read a review, I hear about it on TV, another person recommends it. If in a short period of time, that book just starts coming up and coming up and coming up, I'm thinking somehow or another the universe has orchestrated that book for me to present it in front of me and say, hey, you may want to look at this because this is something that will be helpful for you on your next step. Now that probably says I should stop at this point and say, what are we talking about in the step, in the journey, and all of that? If you've watched any of my videos, I like to talk about the fact that we are spiritual beings at our root who are moving along a human journey. That in this human path, we think we are separate and apart from one another. But as we grow and evolve along our spiritual journey, our spiritual evolutionary journey, we become more and more aware of our interconnectedness, that everything is one, and that we are in this vast array of oneness or non-duality. Yet we're immersed in the human form, thinking that we are separate and apart, and that we see ourselves in relation to everything. And so, the books that we receive recommendations for, and the life's experiences that we get, are often clues for what's next step for us. Next step for what we might need to learn on our journey, on our return back to oneness, to knowing our truth at the deepest level possible. Now, I've been talking about books, but it doesn't have to be books. Life experiences can put before us, in many, many ways, something that it is saying, this is something you need to consider as you're moving through your life experience. Yes, it can be a book, but it can also be a video, a movie, a piece of music, some place to go to and experience. It can be a unique synchronicity or coincidence that occurs in your life that points you in a certain direction. We're continuously getting messages from life that are saying, hey, pay attention to this. This has something for you that you might benefit from as you walk this journey towards remembering your truth. Hence, the recommendations I receive from other people, applying the criteria I was talking about a moment ago, I look at from a standpoint of, is this something I need for my journey? And similarly, when somebody asks me for a recommendation, beyond the simple fun reads, I think about what would be helpful for them. What would be something that could serve their evolution. They can discard it. They can feel like it doesn't resonate with them because ultimately they're going to know what's best for them than me. But I think as we make recommendations to one another, I think we need to also consider that we're both on the giving end and the receiving end of assisting each other on our spiritual paths. As I've often said, we're all teachers and we're all learners, and we play these roles to one another at different times. Sometimes I'm the teacher and you're the learner. Sometimes you're the teacher and I'm the learner. This is not to put anybody on a pedestal because we're all returning home to the same place. We're just taking different paths and are at different steps on the path. So think about this. I hope it's been beneficial for you, and I appreciate you watching this video.